Imagine waking up one morning and 10 members of your family are simply gone. No note, no warning, no trace. Now imagine that family is a nation of millions. And the disappearance happened over 2,700 years ago. This isn't a myth. This isn't a legend. This is one of the most documented and still unsolved mysteries in human history. Where did the 10 lost tribes of Israel actually go? And more importantly, why does the answer still matter today? Most people tell this story as a tragedy of exile. We're going to go deeper than that. Because this isn't just a story about a people who disappeared. It's a story about identity, empire, and what happens when a nation forgets who it is. And scattered across 5 continents right now, there are communities, millions of people, who believe they are the answer to this ancient mystery. Some of them might be right. Stay with me. To understand the disappearance, you have to understand what existed before it. Under King David, and then his son Solomon, the 12 tribes of Israel functioned as a unified kingdom, a political, spiritual, and cultural superpower of the ancient Near East. 12 tribes, 1 crown, 1 temple, 1 God. But Solomon's death cracked the foundation. His son Rehoboam made a decision that leaders throughout history have made and regretted. He chose power over people. When the tribes asked for relief from heavy taxation and forced labor, Rehoboam didn't listen. He doubled down. Pause here, because this moment is almost always glossed over in popular retellings. This wasn't just a political blunder. This was a psychological rupture. The moment a people stopped believing their leader saw them as human beings and started seeing them as resources. When people stop feeling seen, they stop following. 10 of the 12 tribes, the northern kingdom, split off entirely. They formed their own nation, Israel. The remaining 2, Judah and Benjamin, stayed loyal to the Davidic line and became the southern kingdom, Judah. Think about this carefully. The 12 tribes didn't vanish because of foreign invasion alone. They vanished from each other first. The fracture came from within. And that internal crack is what made them vulnerable to everything that followed. In 722 BCE, the Assyrian Empire, the most efficient military machine the ancient world had ever seen, turned its eyes toward the northern kingdom of Israel. Under King Sargon II, Assyria didn't just conquer. They engineered erasure. Their strategy was deliberate and sophisticated. They called it forced population transfer, conquer a nation, deport its leadership, its skilled workers, its priests, the people who carry a culture's memory, then flood the vacated land with foreigners from other conquered territories. The result? A people without roots, a culture without carriers. The biblical book of 2 Kings records it plainly. The king of Assyria carried Israel away into Assyria and placed them in Halah, and by the Habor, the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. This is where many misunderstand what lost actually means. The 10 tribes weren't lost the way you lose your keys. They were systematically displaced, scattered across thousands of miles of the ancient Near East, absorbed into foreign cultures, stripped of the institutional infrastructure that preserves identity. Think about what carries your identity as a people. Your language, your priests, your festivals, your shared stories. Assyria understood, perhaps before modern sociologists did, that if you destroy those, you don't need to destroy the people. They'll dissolve on their own. This is the most chilling part of the Assyrian strategy, and it rarely gets the attention it deserves. Sargon II wasn't just a conqueror. He was a cultural engineer. He understood that memory is a people's most powerful weapon, and so he targeted memory first. The 10 tribes of Israel didn't disappear into dust. They disappeared into assimilation. But here is where everything changes. Because if the 10 tribes simply assimilated, if they blended into the ancient world and vanished, then the story would end there. But it didn't. Because across the globe, in places that have no logical, historical connection to the ancient Middle East, communities began emerging, some centuries ago, some in living memory, with customs, traditions, and oral histories that trace their lineage directly back to the 10 lost tribes. And some of the evidence is almost impossible to explain away. Let's travel. Ethiopia, the Beta Israel. The Beta Israel, also called the Falasha, lived in the highlands of Ethiopia for centuries, practicing a form of Judaism so ancient it predates the Talmud. They observed Sabbath. They practiced animal sacrifice. They kept kosher of Hanukkah. But they had never heard of Hanukkah, because their traditions separated from mainstream Judaism before the Maccabean period. That detail is crucial. You can't fake an absence of knowledge. The Beta Israel's ignorance of post-exilic Jewish developments isn't a sign of inauthenticity. It's actually one of the strongest markers of genuine antiquity. Israel's own rabbinical authorities recognized them. In 1975, the Sephardi chief rabbi formally declared them members of the tribe of Dan. In 1984 and 1991, Israel airlifted over 30,000 Beta Israel to their ancestral homeland in secret military operations called Operation Moses and Operation Solomon. Moses and Operation Solomon. That's not folklore. That's a modern nation-state acting on ancient identity claims. In the remote northeastern hills of India, a people called the Bnei Menashe have preserved their oral traditions. Their journey, from ancient Israel to Manipur and Mizoram, is a story of faith and resilience, claiming descent from the tribe of Manasseh. For generations, before any contact with mainstream Jewish communities, they sang songs about crossing a sea on dry land. They observed a day of rest. They practiced circumcision on the 8th day. They avoided pork. Think about this. These are communities in the hills of India, with no Jewish neighbors, no synagogues, no Torah scrolls for generations, and yet they maintain practices that align with Mosaic law. The most common secular explanation is that these are coincidences or colonial missionary influences. But here's the problem with that theory. Some of these practices were documented before Christian missionaries arrived in the region. In Nigeria, the Eastern part carry oral traditions, naming patterns, and ceremonial practices with striking parallels to ancient Israelite culture. Sabbath observance, circumcision, priestly castes, harvest festivals that mirror Sukkot, a creation narrative that echoes Genesis. Eastern scholar and professor Catherine Acholonu documented dozens of Hebrew loanwords embedded in the Igbo language. Now, I want to be careful here. Similarity is not the same as proof, and there are serious scholars on both sides of every one of these claims. But what's undeniable is this: the pattern of communities independently claiming Israelite heritage across 5 continents. In cultures that had no contact with each other, that pattern demands serious examination. It can't just be dismissed as wishful thinking. Perhaps the most startling case: the Pashtun people of Afghanistan and Pakistan, one of the world's largest tribal societies, numbering over 40 million people, have maintained for centuries that they descend from the lost tribes. They call their ancestor Qais Abdur Rashid and trace their lineage through him back to the tribe of Benjamin. They practice wesh, a periodic redistribution of land among the tribe, a practice with deep resonance in biblical Jubilee law. Historically, before widespread Islamization, many practiced customs including Saturday rest, lighting candles before the Sabbath, and wearing fringed garments. Here's what makes the Pashtun case uniquely compelling. Unlike some other claimants, their tradition isn't driven by a desire to become Jewish. It's simply part of their existing ethnic identity, passed down through generations without religious motivation to preserve it. Absence of motive is one of the strongest markers of authentic oral tradition. But let's stop for a moment. Let's go deeper than geography. Because the real question the lost tribes raise isn't archaeological, it's philosophical. What does it mean to be part of a people? Is it genetics? The science of DNA analysis has actually revealed Israelite genetic markers in several of these communities, particularly the Cohen modal haplotype, a Y chromosome signature linked to the priestly lineage. It's been found in Lemba priests in Zimbabwe, in Bnei Menashe communities, in Beta Israel populations. Is identity blood? Or is it behavior? Is it memory? Is it choice? Here's an idea that doesn't get discussed enough. Perhaps the greatest legacy of the 10 lost tribes isn't the answer to where did they go, but rather the question they force us to ask about ourselves. Every human being carries a heritage that has been fractured, scattered, and partially forgotten. Every culture on Earth has experienced some version of Assyrian displacement, conquest, migration, assimilation, trauma. The lost tribes are not an ancient anomaly. They are the human condition in concentrated form. Here's something that rarely makes it into popular discussions of the lost tribes. The Hebrew prophets didn't treat this story as an ending. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, they all speak of a future regathering, a restoration, not just of the 2 tribes who remained, Judah and Benjamin, but of all 12. Ezekiel's vision of the Valley of Dry Bones, one of the most dramatic passages in all of Scripture, culminates with this declaration from God: I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen whither they be gone, and will gather them on every side, and bring them into their own land. And I will make them one nation in the land, one nation, 12 tribes. Think about what this means theologically. The prophets weren't just recording a tragedy, they were reframing it. The scattering was not the final word. It was. In the prophetic imagination, a chapter. A painful, generation-spanning chapter in a story that hasn't finished being written. And perhaps that's why this mystery has such enduring power. The lost tribes don't just represent the past. In prophetic literature, they represent an open promise, a story of hope and new beginnings. Whether you approach this theologically, historically, or culturally, that open-endedness is what keeps the question alive across millennia. We began with a disappearance. 10 tribes, millions of people scattered into the ancient world like seeds into a storm. Memory is resistance. Some were absorbed. Some preserved fragments of memory across thousands of years and thousands of miles. Some built entirely new civilities that still carry in their rituals and their language and their DNA faint echoes of an ancient covenant. But here's what I want to leave you with, and this is the part that tends to sit with people long after the video ends. The tribes were lost to each other, but perhaps they were never fully lost to themselves. Every Beta Israel elder who lit candles on Friday night, every Pashtun tribesman who observed a day of rest without knowing why it began, every Bnei Menashe child who sang songs at Megfrasil, they were keeping something alive, even when they didn't fully understand what it was. There is something profoundly human in that. The instinct to hold on to fragments of who you are, even when the full picture has been shattered. Memory is resistance. Even when empire has tried to erase you, even when the world has moved on, it is an act of resistance. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real answer to where the lost tribes went. They didn't disappear. They endured. I want to ask you something before you go. Do you believe identity can survive that kind of dispersal, centuries of exile, assimilation, and silence? Or do you think there comes a point where a people becomes something new entirely? Drop your answer in the comments. I read them, I think about them. And the conversations down there are honestly some of the most thoughtful I've seen on any channel. If this kind of deep dive storytelling is what you're looking for, you know what to do. Until next time.